Thanks for clicking on this video and checking out the channel. My name is David Boice. I'm some schmo living in Wisconsin who enjoys his fair bit of cheese and also committed one full year of my life visiting a new church each week. I wrote about it in a book called 52 Churches in 52 Weeks that you can find on Amazon. The book contains a lot of cheesy jokes in it. Most of them are not funny. So, anyway, I'll eat you later. Hit the like and subscribe button if you enjoy awkward humor mixed with religion, or if you're just a fan of cheese, I guess. I don't really know where I'm going with this. Anyway, on this channel, I typically talk about the wide range of churches that I attended, providing some insight for folks that may find it interesting. When I first started doing all this church hopping, I thought I was nuts. And, who in their right mind goes from church to church, trying all these different worship gatherings to find God? Like, seriously, who does that? And as I later learned, quite a few actually. When I was a few months into my faith odyssey, I guess, my blog started getting a lot of traffic from Google, and I decided, okay, well, I'll do a Google search, see what comes up, and when I put it in, I found out there were a couple other blogs out there from people who had done something similar. There was an atheist man in Utah that blogged about his experiences. There was a freelance journalist in Ohio. There also is a married couple, I want to say New Mexico, who would blog about their visits with their child. So today we're going to put the spotlight on three spiritual seekers, worship wanderers, church crazies. I don't really have a good name for it yet. Anyway, three people who ended up also writing their own book after visiting or after spending 1 year trying a new worship gathering each week. All three writers, they came from different backgrounds. They had different experiences. And they all had a few different approaches when it came to this spiritual experiment. I'll put Amazon links in the description below so you can check out their own books and where to find them. Also, just borrow from Amazon and with their images, just so you can kind of see what their books look like. From all the accounts I've read, each seeker, like each story was very fascinating to read about, and it completely changed the life of each person. So I'd recommend taking a look at all these books if this is something that interests you when it comes to the different type of religions and faiths out there. First up, we have The Church Experiment, written by Steve Fuller. Steve Fuller did his spiritual exploration in 2009. And for Steve, he was or is a communications professor at the University of Cincinnati. And early on, he believed there was a higher power, but he kind of found Christians to be weird. And eventually, he came across a very trusted friend who kind of took him under his tutelage. And eventually, Steve went gung-ho into the Christian life. So he started reading his Bible, he started praying, he started serving, he started attending church. He even started to plant his own church. And after a few years, I don't know if it was burnout or what, he suddenly found himself outside of church. And the college professor inside of him wanted to kind of reconnect with God to a certain extent, but also to explore and kind of understand a little bit more about the different faiths out there. So the church experiment kicked off in 2009, and Fuller was basically standing outside a Christian megachurch in Lebanon, Ohio. This megachurch had a 62-foot high statue that was commonly referred to as Touchdown Jesus, because the statue looked like Jesus had just signaled a touchdown for the Cleveland Browns or Cincinnati Bengals. Maybe Ohio State Buckeyes are a little bit more successful in Ohio. But bizarrely, that statue burned down a year later after Steve had visited, after lightning hit it. So who knows what happened there. Now, he nearly benched the idea after week 2 when the pastor of that church just went on a tirade after finding Steve's blog and criticized him for being, well, judging his church. And but Steve stuck with it, and he eventually found a really solid, engaged audience for his blog at that time. So in addition to more modern and traditional type of churches, Steve also visited Scientology, some Muslim mosques, a Hindu temple. Unlike me, he actually had success attending an atheist church. And the one I thought was pretty interesting was he set up his own personal virtual church one Sunday, which, as we know, years later with the pandemic, ended up being quite more common than you would have liked in 2020. So Steve, he published The Church Experiment in 2017, almost 8 years after he completed the experiment. And what I liked is he actually, the beginning, when he first released it, proceeds went to charity. And he kept his 2009 blog comments intact, but he also added some witty comments from his future self, his 2017 self, just to kind of give a little bit more insight in terms of how he saw himself years later. The second book that we'll talk is My 52 Weeks of Worship, which was done in 2010, written by the Chief Experience Officer, Pamay Bassey. Now, for Pamay, her motivation stemmed from a lot of loss in 2009. She had a number of family deaths occur, and also had a bad breakup with a man that she thought she was destined to marry. And she basically felt like God had given up on her. So rather than sulk in misery, Pamay, almost like a New Year's resolution, she resolved for 2010 where she would try and visit a new place of worship each week. And it started in her hometown of Chicago, and it eventually spiraled to about, I want to say, 60 or 61 different churches, mosques, temples, living rooms, covens, where she went all over the United States, but then she also visited different countries like Mexico, went to England, Nigeria, not New Jersey, Nigeria, and also South Africa. And overall, she published My 52 Weeks of Worship, Lessons from a Global Spiritual Interfaith Journey in 2012. So I found Pamay's book a few months into my own journey, and was even inspired by her own visit to the Baha'i House of Worship in Wilmette, Illinois. I was so inspired that I wanted to visit myself and include it in my own book, just because I was so curious about her experience there and what that meant for my own faith. Anyway, she holds her own beliefs, but you would never know it with her writing style. Her writing was very unbiased, which was very refreshing. And for instance, it's hard to hit the reset button for what are some firm convictions when it comes to your faith. How she managed to be completely unbiased and be open for all these different faiths was really nice. She gave a TED Talk not too long ago called Navigating Sacred Spaces, where she talks about going from church community to church community and how it changed her, and basically what it meant to have a more authentic connection to the divine. Third, last but not least, is 52 Churches by Peter DeHaan. This came out actually 2 months after my own book was published. Peter's story is he would volunteer at a food pantry that was sponsored by a number of Christian churches within his local community. And when he helped, he'd get asked about his church life, because that's an awkward question to ask. So, he went to church outside of town, but part of him wished that he knew more about the local churches so he could be more informative. And he eventually found the idea of 52 churches and decided to write about it. So as it turned out, he and his wife, they found 58 churches within a 10-mile radius where they lived. Now, unlike the other books where, we would find out what church it was, what city, what state, what the date was, all that kind of stuff. I haven't finished the book yet, but Peter takes a different approach where he doesn't name, and I don't know if this is privacy or not. Part of me is intrigued why he did it this way, but no churches are named in the book. No cities are named, no dates. We don't even know what state this occurred or year this occurred. I think it's part of just like Peter wanting to be very private for the people that he's engaged with in conversation, because the book is very different from the other books, mine included, where he's having active conversations with people that he knows within his local community. And I think that's part of the appeal and part of the charm of it, is there are no names of these other people, but he's finding church based off people. It's not the key influencer isn't about the building or the religious traditions that are going on. It's the people. The church are the human element that makes church the church are those conversations that you have with people. And even though no one is named, I think he does a very good job in terms of having that conversation and just make it very down to earth and very, very practical. So I haven't finished the book yet, but I intend to do so quite soon. So if you ever get the chance, check out these Spiritual Seeker books. Each writer approached the 52 Churches in 52 Weeks project a little differently, and it was very, very interesting to see some of the contrasts. So like I mentioned in my own book, the Bible, it talks about all these men from Moses to David to Jesus who went out in the desert to the wild unknown, not just to find themselves, but also to find God. And in today's religious world, especially traditional religion, you're taught to stay at the same home church. You don't want to wander anywhere else. And church hopping has had a negative connotation, where it implies that people are trying to find the perfect church. And as we all know, there is no perfect church. With the 52 Churches idea, what it does is it acts as a catalyst to go outside your comfort zone. And it basically makes your faith your own. Whether your faith has become stagnant, whether you feel like you're wrestling with God, or if you're just curious about broadening your religious knowledge. If you're Christian, great. If you're atheist, great. It doesn't matter where you come from. It's just trying to expand what so many people in the world are convicted by. And it's not a long-term solution to strengthen your faith, that's for sure. It's not sustainable either, but it does act kind of like a short-term spiritual shakeup. So that's what I got for today. My name is David Boice from 52 Churches in 52 Weeks. I'm going to eat this cheese in a little bit, so I'm excited for that. Hit the like and subscribe button if you'd like to stay up to date for future videos. But until next time, stay classy, San Diego.